Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and this is the EVE Universe Show's continued coverage of the CSM 16 election with our interviews with the candidates. This time, we got Jim Halescott. How you doing, Jim?
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I'm doing really well. I woke up early this morning to do the CCP interview, and I've basically just been chilling and waiting for Ashtarothi since then. So it's a real big pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Very cool, very cool. I appreciate you working with me. You are in a radically different time zone, which we'll probably talk about when we get into the interview. So you were one of the people that we really had to work together in order to make this work. So let's get the most out of our time by jumping right into it, by explaining the rules like we always do. I have 50 minutes to cover the candidate, go over the candidacy with the candidate. I have their post in front of me in order to do reference, which I will bring up and show to the people as we're talking. And from there, we will explore what makes the candidate potentially a strong candidate and why my viewers might be interested in them. After I take that 50 minutes, there is a 10-minute warning in which I give it over more to Jim at this point, and he will be given opportunity to cover anything else that he may feel that I have missed or something he wants to reinforce as a primary thing or some final pitch or whatever. Once we are both satisfied, we wrap it up and it gets sent over to YouTube where it goes on the playlist with all of the others. So that way you can watch them all in order to make an informed decision for who represents you on the CSM, because that is the most important thing, having a quality CSM based on backed by votes of informed viewers or informed voters that are seeking representation to CCP. So without further ado, I normally describe like when I have a new candidate or when I have somebody at the very beginning, I talk about like conflicts of interest, the ways I know the person ahead of time. You're one of those people that I feel like I probably should have something to talk about, but yet for some reason your name has not like registered a profound understanding in my brain. I guess, so I'll just ask you, do we know each other?
We have spoken in the past, yes.
That's not creepy.
That was exactly the point. So I'll just jump in and just kind of like explain a little bit more about myself, just to kind of clarify. But so it must have been like a few months just after the Upwell structures were released into the game, and there was a video that was released by, I can't remember who it was, but I'm sure if you went to YouTube now and someone were to look for it, it's called Grand Theft Citadel. And if you were to look for that, I'm pretty sure it's still up there. And there was a group of people who had found on, I believe, one of the gates going into Jita, there was a unanchored Astraeus, basically 1,000 kilometers away from the gate. So they basically hustled and grabbed a load of people together to go and pick this pick up this structure. And I kind of saw, I wonder how many more unanchored structures there are around the game and how do I find them. So I very quickly worked out the mechanics on how this worked, and then I started a massive career of stealing structures, and then that led me down the rabbit hole of, rather than waiting for structures to unanchor, I'm going to now try to start infiltrating alliances and corporations with as many alpha accounts as I can to gather as much information and intelligence as I can to then be able to figure out when they're going to be unanchoring their structures. And you'd be surprised the amount of corporations and alliances that tell all of their members, our Vitaru or our Asbel or Fortisart will be unanchoring on this date at this time. And they put that on their message of the day in the corporation channel, and I'm just like, oh, thanks for letting me know. And then I'll just go get an alt and I'll just wait, about 1,000 kilometers off, and the date and the time comes, I log in. Sometimes they're not even there. They forget to pick it up, which is the funniest thing ever. And I just warp over, scoop it, and warp off. So I think we have met a couple of times in the past, in here, there, and everywhere. There's been a lot of people I've met in the past, and and they don't even know that I've met them. I've been on fleets with random people in the past, people who are quite high profile, and they don't even know that I've had an alt in their fleet, which has been quite fun. So yeah, I'm pretty sure we've met a couple of times in the past.
Well, fair enough. Good news is that I assume this is true all the time anyway. So no, and to that point, just in case anybody might see that as as a kind of problematic way of looking. In essence, you are, if anything, exploiting the vulnerability in the social structure, right? Like, there's no need for players to give that information away. In fact, there's lots of methods for organizations to conceal that kind of information from you. That being said, the natural instinct is, if I'm anchoring something, I need to give as much clear warning to my people as possible. And therefore, they are, the natural inclination is to do that. But it is, CCP built into that mechanic the fact that that information is usable by people like you. And so in that sense, you manifest a threat in the game that is a core piece of the game design that wouldn't be realized if people like you didn't take on this challenge. And that's an important piece to this.
There are actually a number of other mechanics in the game where I don't even need to socially interact with the corporation to have an idea on what is actually going on with a structure, even if the structure isn't it's, I don't even have access to dock there. I can right click the structure, go down right to the bottom, and there's an option which is open cargo hold, and you can just drop a single titanium inside the structure, or any item, any asset. That will give me live information on that structure, if it's in high power, low power, or if it's going to be going into abandoned mode within 2 days, or if it's just either when a structure is anchored. When it either unanchors or explodes, I get a notification of the exact second that's just occurred. So if I'm online with my character and I've just got a notification, in this system, this structure has just this structure has just either unanchored or exploded. I can then just look up on the kill boards, or if it's in HiSec, have a look at the corporation that owns it and see if they've got a war deck. And if they've got a war deck, or if there is a kill, then I know it's exploded. But if it hasn't, then I know it's unanchored. And then I can just, log in another toon which is currently sat in the system with a hauler, ready to just log in and just grab the structure and just get out. So that's what I've been doing for a while now. But then again, recently over the last few months, I haven't really been doing it. I've kind of been looking at other things which have been going on in the game. But yeah, so that's kind of my call to fame really over the last 3 to 4 years is structure theft, corporation infiltration, information warfare, and misinformation warfare, which I found just as valuable as real information warfare.
That's extremely interesting. I would not be surprised if you grabbed at least one of our structures, but at the same time, only if we've earned it, basically. Lessons have to be learned, as it were. But so and I will say this though, I would really appreciate it if you, on a personal note, I'd really appreciate it if you didn't campaign on one of our tricks to keep track of things and keep it hush hush. That would have been super cool of you. But since you've made a campaign issue of it, I would say that I think that it's interesting that you are making a big issue of this stuff, because the trick that you described is something that several organizations that do things like attack abandoned structures have figured out and talk about. But in Eve, these kinds of tricks end up being power, and so I certainly wasn't talking about this strategy publicly, and I'm the guy that talks about things. You are taking the thing that was, I'm sure, incredibly lucrative to you and entertaining, and turned it into, and now you're coming out with it and using it to campaign for the CSM. So help finish the circle around it for me. Is it just that you're bored of it and so you've moved on, so you're ready to help people or help figure out how to fix it? Or do you think that there's something wrong with the play? Are you trying to protect it if people are coming after it? How does this turn into Jim, the CSM guy?
Honestly, I do believe that whilst it has been extremely lucrative, this sort of play, I do believe that with the mechanics, not the social engineering side of it, when you have to infiltrate a corporation or an alliance and gather information that way, I think that's totally balanced. But when you can just drop assets into any structure without having to dock there, I do believe that is a something which, in my honest opinion, I wouldn't say it's broken, but I do believe it's exploitative. And even though I have been using it and it's been a completely legal thing to do within the game, I do believe that fundamentally needs to change. Whilst, like I said, even though I've been advocating for it and I've kind of been using it and I've been showing other people how to do it, I think one of my main reasons for showing people how to do it was almost to try and hopefully get it as much attention as it needs to the CSM and the current CSM and CCP, so hopefully that they change it. Some of the things that I've done in the past have had CCP change some of the mechanics. So when structures were first released, the Upwell structures were first released, when I first started stealing them in Highsec, you didn't get a suspect flag when you picked them up. So you can imagine how annoyed the owners are. They're on grid. They're, some random guy walks in, picks up your Fortizar, and then walks off, but he's not flagged. He's, you can't shoot him. And there have been a few times where people did shoot me, and then they got concorded for it. And I thought that was really broken. So I did contact the CSM at that point, and I thought, this really isn't fair. I mean, this is a bit too far, even for me. This really should be fixed. And I think within a month or so, there was a thing that was sent out, and CCP fixed that, and now everybody goes suspect when you pick up a structure that isn't yours, which I thought was really good. Because even though I'm the one that's doing it, I advocate for pure, fair gameplay. Even though I'm the evil person in the night that will screw around with your crap, I'm still very a massive advocate for the gameplay being fair as much as possible for all parties involved.
All right, but this is an extremely niche play and counterplay interaction. Do we really need a CSM candidate for this, or representative for this issue, or is this something that CCP can just know that you're the guy to talk to about these kinds of things, and DM you on Discord?
So this isn't the only thing that I know about. This is one of many things. My knowledge of the game mechanics in general are quite. I don't mean to sound like I'm bragging, but they are quite vast. There are some things I'm not 100% on, but the large majority of the game I feel extremely confident with. So much so that I feel like I can pretty much just get into anything and just do it within the first couple of hours, even though I don't have that much experience of it. So because of that, I like to mix different mechanics together, different mechanics which technically aren't really supposed to be together. So some mechanics from factional warfare and some mechanics related to just normal industry, and I'll mix them together and create something niche, something that sometimes is exploitable. At the end of the day, my knowledge is going to be quite good and helpful for the next CSM and also CCP. So when CCP wants to bring out new content to the game, I can quickly see, okay, this content that you're bringing and these new items, these new ships, they can be abused in a number of different ways. For example, one of the things that I think right now, and there's going to be a load of wormhole people that probably absolutely hate me for saying this, but I find it quite broken, is using... I think you can still do it. I don't know if CCP patched it, but I did ask someone in Wormhole and they told me that they could still do it. It's using the Triglavian filaments to jump from Wormhole space into Triglavian space and then basically cloak up, and then use it after 15 minutes, use another one to jump into Highsec, carrying all of their blue loot. You're talking tens of billions inside their ship. And I thought that was really exploitative. I'm not 100% sure if that's been fixed yet or if CCP plans to fix it, but I think that is something that really should change, because I don't really see the reward is too high and the risk is too low. And in EVE Online, we need to have that reward and risk balance. It needs to be really, really fundamental in the game. And whilst I really love and advocate also for player creativity and also for emergent gameplay, I do believe that sometimes it goes a little bit too far. And then at that point, it's okay, whilst like for example with me stealing the citadels and putting the tritanium in the structure to gather information and find out when it's either going to unanchor, explode, when it goes into low power and eventually abandoned mode, everything like that. I find that quite exploitative. I do believe that should change at one point, even though it's been fantastically lucrative to me and a lot of other people that I know that I've told about this. I do believe that it's a bit too far, and really it should be plugged to give the people that own those structures the ability to basically conceal that information from people like me and everybody else. So that really is like my main advocacy is I'm not joining the CSM. I'm not planning to join the CSM with any alliance or any corporation in mind. I'm joining the CSM as somebody who cares about the fairness, the balance of the game, but also the advocate, going into the future of Evenline, any of the new updates, and making sure that almost like quality testing and kind of like using the knowledge that I have and saying, okay, CCP's provided me with on all of the stuff that's obviously going to be in the non-disclosure agreement on the NDA. These are the changes that they're planned, and I'm saying, okay, this new thing that's coming out or this new thing that's coming out, those two could potentially be used with older mechanics, maybe to do with like the POS mechanics, because I still use POSes today for stuff that it's still a thing. And they could be mixed with other older mechanics in the game, even legacy mechanics where they could, something could be which is niche, something that's really exploitable, which could make people a lot of money very fast, or something where it could just make the game unfair to a particular group of players. And I don't believe that should be the case. And we need to have like as much balance and as much fairness in the game as possible. And that's my advocacy, is to use my knowledge in the game to create to help CCP make the game as fair as possible long term.
I do want to actually, interestingly enough, I'm going to challenge your notion about it being exploitive with the one trit thing, not just because we used it, but because by using that strategy, I know how much work was put into finding all of those structures and putting in the trit and putting them together and building the tools in order to track it and all that kind of stuff. Wouldn't you say that there's a certain amount of like, shouldn't there be a reward for the construction of such an intelligence network? Being a person that did that, did you feel like you were building something and then being rewarded for it? Or did you feel like you were cheesing?
Well, I'll be honest. I'll tell you the exact everything. I'm more than happy to go ahead with that. I actually made, for HiSec specifically, because it was much easier to do, I made one character per system in HiSec, alpha character.
Right.
I put each character in every single system in the game. I have a massive spreadsheet. Yeah, it goes that far. Massive spreadsheet of all these characters. A lot of them actually went Omega, so if CCP ever listens to this, I actually did make a lot of them Omega because I needed, them to be sometimes flying Omega ships like Orcas, and I would inject into Orcas to pick up large structures. But yeah, the large majority of them were Alpha, and essentially instead of using jump clones because you got that 24-hour cooldown period or whatever, I decided to just go Alphas. So once I had got that network set up, which I'm not going to lie, it took me about 1.5 to 2 years in real life to get that done. Then the entire seeding process was happening, and I had a number of people to assist me with that. And the annoying part of the seeding process was once you've put one tritanium every structure in the system, you can't just contract all of them in one contract. You've got to contract them one at a time. And with the limit of contracts being maximum at 21, you can't do it when I'm offline. We've got to do it together at the same time, so I can accept contracts as you're giving me contracts, and that sometimes took hours. And by the end of it, our hands are like, oh my god, I feel like I've got carpal tunnel syndrome in my hand. It's all the clicking is a bit crazy, but yes, it was worth it. Was I making huge amounts of money? We were, like, me and the guys who were working with me, we were making absolute bank. I think I went within the space of about 2 weeks. We went from, we tested it from 0 ISK up to about 200 billion within around about 1.5 to 2 weeks, just stealing structures in HiSec with that method. And whilst yes, it was a massive thing to put together to cover every single region, every single section in the game, or around HiSec rather, it was a lot. I think the reason why I find it a little bit more exploitative now is the fact that it's too easy to maintain, because all you need to do is just, copy and paste all of the information you've got from your assets list into a big spreadsheet, and then log in every day, and then just monitor what structures have been dropped, which are new structures in the game. Just go there and seed them, and which structures are the ones which have either been unanchored or have exploded, and then you just delete them from the spreadsheet. Takes me maybe about an hour a day to keep it updated. And at that point, when you're making that amount of money compared to what everybody else is doing in the game, it's a little bit like, yeah, it's a little bit too far.
But how is this not as like crazy complex as any industrial program, or even the entirety of an entire small nullsec organization, as far as like coordinate? Like, you're talking about getting people, you have to keep refreshing that information, keeping track that they're stale. Didn't even sound like you're using APIs in order to track a lot of that stuff. I mean, you just said an hour worth of work. Some people think that the PI, 10 minutes of PI is too much to have to do a day. Like, how is this not valid gameplay?
I think it's more like there's almost no counter to it, because I'm using ships where it's like the ship is worth like 1 million ISK. It's a Tech 1 industrial to pick up medium structures. And if someone does, shoot that ship and kill it, okay, that's like a very, very small counter. But there's no actual counter to stop, like, all of the other players from me having this information. There's, in my honest opinion, like, if you've got a public structure and people can access it, then that information should be public, and I should be able to have access to that. But if you've made a structure only for your corporation, only for like specific people that you want to dock there, I should not be able to get the information from that structure and to be able to abuse it the way that I do. I believe that information should be completely off limits to anybody, or even maybe CCP could have certain access levels of information, because information is power. As you said earlier, information is extremely powerful, and I honestly do believe that it's a little bit too far, and I don't think that everybody should have access to information on structures that they don't even have access to docking. They've got no access to even tether on, let alone dock. So how they're able... I mean, let's put it this way. I'm going to assume, because some people don't know, and that shocks me, but I'm going to assume you know what the sensor overlay is within the game.
Yes.
Yeah, so with the sensor overlay, you don't even need to scan structures down. Like these... Right. Non-public structures, you don't even need to scan them down. I think that's a little bit... Because back in the day with POSs, you didn't, the way you found them was either you use D-scan, or you've got to use probes, or you essentially go moon to moon, one at a time, taking a lot of time to do that. So yeah, I do believe that really is one of the main reasons why it's a bit... I can see that you're busy. It's fine. Daijab, see my sense.
No, keep going.
Yeah, so it's... Yeah, I think like back in the day when I was saying with the POS system, it was much more difficult to just be able to find stuff. Like for example, right now, if you were to log in and you were to take a structure in a ship and just go and anchor it, as soon as you started the anchoring process, everybody in the system can see that you've just anchored a structure. Like even if you make it non-public, people can see on the sensor overlay, oh, a new structure's just popped up, and then they can just warp to it. Even though it hasn't even finished anchoring, they can warp to it. They can find information out about it straight away. Right. They don't need to scan it with probes. They don't need to de-scan it down or actually try and put much effort into finding. They just need to wait and just look. And if they look, then they can abuse. And I find that level of information is a bit too high, in my opinion.
So are you referring to, in this case, the little blips that you can see in space, and the fact that you would be able to see it appear in space when you
yes.
Yeah, okay.
But on the sensor overlay as well, you can see the little blip on the sensor overlay. Line the camera up, and then you just right click warp to 0, and you're there. And you don't even need to scan it down. So when you were saying earlier that you've got to like spend time finding these, there's no time finding these. You just literally jump into the system and you just go each one at a time, just drop a tritanium in. I'm doing it while I'm watching Netflix, so it's just
right. But I mean, but people are doing mining or Abyss while they're watching Netflix. And that, like, yes, it is, and it is also true that you can just hit D-scan and right click warp to there too. But I mean, traveling to every single high-sec system and making sure that you get to go to every single structure and then putting it all in a spreadsheet and stuff. I don't know. I think you might be underplaying it a little bit, but
Maybe I've done this for too long, and now maybe I'm thinking it's too easy or something. I'm not sure, but for me, I'm thinking, okay, these people who are AFK mining, or somewhat semi AFK mining, or they're semi AFK doing abyssals and stuff, and they're watching Netflix. They're still taking a risk because the gankers can still kill the mining ships if they're not paying attention. Abyssal people, maybe they're not 100% paying attention, and they just have a slip. Their mind slips because they're focusing on their Netflix program too much, and then they lose their Gila or something. But for me, it's like, oh, what do I lose? Oh, I lose a ship that's worth, like, I don't know, less than maybe the same as a what's it called, a rookie ship or something, and I just don't care, and I just go and get another one and just put some titanium in it, and I off I go again. There's practically no counter for it, really, to gather that information. The only counter is time and effort.
Right.
But in game, there's no one that can actually stop me to do this. The only way you could literally stop me would be to make sure that I can never, undock, I suppose.
Well, I mean, at the same time, we have definitely unanchored structures, and had you not take them, by not, by being very, very careful about stuff, I assume, or perhaps a bit lucky. But that being said, this is, as you said, not your your primary issue. I wanted to explore it a little bit to kind of dig into who you were, because as I often say, like, what really matters is what the CSM candidate or representative is when the door is closed, and it's at the summit. The things that we don't even get in the meetings, right? Like, that's where you're going to be able to make a difference, and who we need to figure out you are. So it's useful to me to explore that kind of thing. And whenever you say, like, here's a thing that I used a lot and now I think it's bad, especially when I disagree with you that it's as bad as you said it was a fun thing to explore. But I do want to broaden out a little bit, and I normally actually start with this, but let's just go ahead and begin. Is this your first time running for the CSM?
Yes, it is. That's correct. I've been told by a lot of people to run for the last couple of years, but I've always been putting it off. But I thought, okay, a few hundred people now have been telling me for the last couple of years that I should really be running for this. So I thought, fine, why not? Let's give it a go.
Right. So, and you started like a while ago, though. It says in 2013. Have you been basically an active player since 2013?
Pretty much, yeah. There's been the odd time when I've been busy in real life, moving to university, leaving university, maybe the odd time when my computer breaks down, I have to buy a new one and build a new one, But other than that, I've been pretty active within the community and within the game ever since.
Right. And that is actually something we forgot. I didn't circle back on, which is that you are in Japan right now, right?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. So thankfully, we haven't had to make any excuses about your internet or anything like that, knock on wood, yet. So it hasn't come up yet.
Yeah.
But that is true, which also means that you represent and you see currently a different time zone. I assume that you haven't always been in Japan since you've been playing this game either. So that probably has helped broaden your perspective of the EVE game and EVE player base, has it?
Absolutely, yeah. I have actually met a few Japanese players, which has been pretty nice, really, and I've communicated them in Japanese, which has been pretty cool. And then when I tell them, I'm not actually Japanese and I'm from the UK originally, they're like super amazed by that. So it's been pretty cool. But yeah, so I do find it interesting in game though. Here's actually one thing which I find that needs to be done, and this is actually something that's recent. And there's one guy recently on the Facebook group's been arguing with me about it. But for example, with the static asteroid belt mining in high sec or in low sec or in null sec or anything, there's like the normal static belts, not the anomaly ones. If you're in my time zone, I find, because I don't really do much mining, but when the mining kind of spiked recently, I kind of thought, wow, I could really get in on this and make a bit of money. So I got a load of alts together and just undocked them, and I went mining for a few weeks while the ore prices were pretty damn high. I think they went up nearly 3 times what they normally were, and at that point it was pretty nice. But when I came home from work, pretty much every day, Monday to Friday, about maybe, this is literally 3 hours before downtime hits, and all the asteroid belts have basically just been eaten away. So anybody that lives in my time zone, anybody that lives in even the Australian time zone, because they're very close, on that sort of like geographical sort of slither of time zones. And I actually had a few Australians in my thread talk about this, and they said, yeah, they agree. That is when they log in. A lot of the asteroid belts, a lot of the static belts are dead. There's nothing left. So if you've got, for example, if you're doing exploration in the game, so if you're an explorer, when you kill a site and you've got data site or relic site and you've done all of the nodes inside it, another one will spawn somewhere else in the game, usually within the same constellation, I believe. I'm not 100% sure if those are the correct mechanics, but somewhere nearby another one will spawn, and that is like a 24-hour thing where it constantly respawns all the time. But for the static mining, it's not. They respawn once every 24 hours. And since I get home like maybe 3 to 2 hours before downtime hits, I log in, and there's nothing for me to mine. There's nothing going on. There's nothing for anybody in my time zone locally to mine because someone's been along over the last, from the European time zone or the American time zone, and they've just stripped all the belts. All the nearby systems are pretty much dead. So then we got to wait. 2-3 hours until downtime hits, and then we get maybe 1 or 2 hours tops of quality mining before we've got to go to bed because we've got work the next day early in the morning. So it's I think that's a little bit unfair, and I am thinking maybe we should do away with the old asteroid belts, just get rid of all the static belts, and just bring back the anomalies, but maybe by a factor of 2,000. And just have anomalies everywhere. So when a anomaly site gets, it's gone, another one respawns. So then it's a 24-hour continuous cycle for everybody. And then that gives CCP a little bit more control as well in regards to what asteroids they want to spawn in certain areas of the game. And then they can dictate and they can control the influx of materials into the game a little bit more closely. I think that would be something that's a little bit more fairer for everybody and give CCP a little bit more control on what's going on within the game.
I was going to make the joke that if you happen to move to Japan about a year ago, then that might not be the only reason why there suddenly seems like there's no rocks anymore when you play. But it is true that this has been kind of a constant problem forever. And diamond rats certainly didn't help that because the diamond mining fleets just kind of all but ensure that the belts are stripped every day, even before scarcity. By the time it gets around to that time zone, is a known issue. Arguably, it could be one of the reasons why you see the scarcity and the moving away from things in belts, and it looks like they're doing more with anomalies. Because you're absolutely right, it gives them a better dial on things to be able to affect. And when they talk about dynamic resource redistribution, that speaks to me about anomalies, so that it's good that that's an issue of yours, or that's something that's where you're jiving with, because that really seems to be the direction that CCP is going to be going in the next year or forward.
I hope so. I really do, because now that I've moved to Japan and this time zone, I kind of saw the problem. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I spoke to a load of Australian friends about it and asked if they were in the same sort of situation. They said, yeah, we've been dealing with this for a long time and we've been advocating for a long time to get that changed, but it's never really, never really come to fruition. So that's something that I would like to change, or like to bring to CCP's attention and hopefully get it done, really, and get it changed so it's a bit more fairer for all the miners and industrialists out there.
Yeah, and now with a Korean owner and all these new localizations, there is a newfound call for these kinds of issues to get fixed, or at least looked at and addressed. And again, this may very well be the reason why one of the causes of the exact design that we're seeing unfold in their resource redistribution. But it's probably still early to tell that, and why we would need a good CSM representative that feels that this is important to help CCP navigate this issue. So speaking of your location and physical space, under normal conditions, I like to put the Alliance logo or organization or whatever of the person in the center of the interview space, just to give people an understanding of their stuff. You don't have an Alliance logo for me to use, but you do have this image of you that is clearly from Reykjavik Eve FanFest. I can recognize several of the people in that photo. What you want to tell us a little bit about this?
So back then, that was probably right at the start of just when I was beginning to steal structures. Actually, that was April 2017. And I was there on holiday with friends, and that was Six Empire in the background, pretty much. And I was with Charles with the Space Pope. We had a great time. It was really good. I missed the one in 2018 that they went to, which was really good. And I'm not sure did one happen in 2019? I can't actually remember.
2019 was the Invasion World Tour. So instead of having one big fan fest, they had a lot of little ones.
That's totally right. And obviously since then, because of coronavirus, we haven't really had a fan fest, which is a massive shame. But yeah, so that was the last one that I've been to, is the 2017 fan fest. So I basically hung out with the Space Pope and all of his guys. And on that particular day, it's a bit unfortunate. I didn't have my monk outfit on, and you see some of the guys behind we've got one of my friends there, she's got the nun outfit, and Stuart in the far left, he's got his monk outfit on. So we had a bit of a role playing sort of thing there, and that was a lot of fun. But on that particular day, I think it was a bit too warm, so I decided to take everything off and just be normal rather than role playing for the day. So yeah, that was good. In fact, actually, it was quite funny during that fan fest, because as we were walking from where we were staying, we had a big bell, and we had Charles White, the Space Pope, in the middle of our congregation, and we walked there's about 20 of us in our group, and then we walked through Reykjavik towards the Harper with this big bell, and we're like janging it up and down, and we're shouting, "Make way for the Space Pope!" And literally all the cars on the street just stopped to like let us pass on this giant like intersection. They're like, "What the hell's going on?" It was pretty damn funny. So yeah, that was FanFest 2017. That was a good time. I'm looking forward to when Corona's gone and we get new FanFests again. I'm looking forward to Eve Meets.
I am as well, and I feel like we're getting closer and closer. I'm excited about that prospect.
I hope so.
So I have pulled up your areas of expertise, and the first thing really stands out to me. I feel like you're baiting me, but it says understanding at least 90 to 95% of all in-game mechanics, and using that knowledge to mix a number of them to create novel and interesting tactics and strategies for all sorts of content. That is a bold claim under normal conditions. EVE Online is an incredibly complex game. There's a lot of mechanics to know. Titonia, for example, is another person who is running for CSM and beat me on the what is it, the trivia contest, and yet is able to tell me what they aren't knowledgeable about in EVE. Even Titonia doesn't know everything. 90 to 95% is a lot. Can you convince me that that's
about the mechanics? I don't know, to be perfectly honest. It's not like I've done some sort of like statistical analysis on my own knowledge. I'm just taking a roundabout number between maybe 90 to 95%. But like if someone comes up to me and they're like, "Oh, how would you recommend doing exploration wormholes?" And there'll be a lot of people that say, "Go and get an Astero." And then I'm thinking, okay, you could get an Astero, but if you've got a little bit of time to wait and you train up into a covert op ship, the covert op ships are actually better when you get to level 5 skills. They actually have a slightly higher boost. And a lot of people I find when I've been talking about exploration, they don't actually know that that's a thing. They think the Astero is like the best ship for it. And I'm thinking, oh, no, it's actually not. There's a load of other ships that you can use as well, including Tech 3 cruisers. Right. So yeah, I think the large majority of the game mechanics I'm fairly confident with, and if I'm not 100% with it, I can learn it within like a couple of hours or less. Or typically, for example, like T3 cruisers, I haven't used them since at least 2018, maybe 2017. So it's been a long time since I was in my Loki, and I do believe they've updated since then. I think they went from 5. What's it called? Subsystems to 4 subsystems. Yeah, that was like the last time I was flying a Tech 3 cruiser was back when we had 5 subsystems. So since they've updated, I haven't really updated my actual knowledge base on the 4 subsystems. But like I said, give me like 5-10 minutes or something, I could pretty much update my knowledge on that. When it comes to fitting, it's a little bit more different, but I feel very confident with that. So, for example, if someone to ask me to explain, how turret damage application works compared to missile damage application, I could explain that. So I'm quite confident with all of the large majority of the game mechanics, and then being able to mix them together in a unique, different way. That's pretty much how I was able to figure out how dropping a tritanium into a structure would generate information for me, because the cargo drop was put in by CCP to stop courier contract scams, where people would put in a scam, then make a courier contract, then they'd make the structure no longer possible to dock at, and then the person would have to pay the collateral, whatever it was, and that was a bit of a thing that they tried to avoid. So they put in the cargo drop after they put in the structures in the game, and then I used the cargo drop to in my own way to do something completely unique and different.
Right. So that's a really good example. Just a question of scope. I'm not going to try to like challenge you or quiz you really quick to see or anything like that. That's not important. I'm more interested in how you feel and what you mean by these things. But just as a matter of scope, are you talking about like specifically in-flight or combat mechanics, or are you talking about industry? Are you talking about market? Are you talking like how all are you talking about here? Like even devs don't claim 90% knowledge of everything.
Market, I know very well. There's actually a bug at the moment in the market. I made a bug report about it a while ago. Still not been fixed. I'm not going to talk about it. It's not fair, but it's pretty bad. But yeah, there is an issue in the market at the moment. Market, I'm pretty happy with. I know how it works. Combat mechanics, I know how they work in theory. I don't have like myself personally massive experience when it comes to like fighting in fleets and everything else. Coming to make fleets themselves, like the actual fleet mechanics, very happy with that. I've learned how to do that a long time ago when I was doing massive mining back in the day when we didn't even have upwell structures and we only used posses, and I don't even think there was a compression array back then. But yeah, there was. I was using posses at the time. So I learned how all of the fleet mechanics worked, and I was in at the time when I was mining, I used to run up to 11 or 12 characters in a fleet that were all my characters at the same time, and I would put them all together. I'd warp them. We used to have off-grid boosts. That's how long ago I used to do this. So I'm quite happy with fleet mechanics, warp 2 and everything else, how that works. How the overview works, I know pretty much that in and out, how to manipulate it into special ways to get different colors. You name it, I feel like I've got at least some experience in the large majority of everything. And if I'm not 100% sure, I know how to find the information or who to talk to. Like, for example, the Triglavian stuff, the recent stuff that's recently been coming out. I've been going into Pochvan. I've been, messing about with some of the mechanics, having a little bit of fun. I know some of it. I'm not an expert on it, but I do know someone who is an expert. So if I do have a particular question on the topic, I could ask him. And he is actually still, he is also running for CSM. So one of the guys, he's one of my buddies. And yeah, so I feel pretty confident that if I don't know the answer to something, or if I'm not 100% something, I know someone who I can speak to who will give me the answer or will give me the information that I need to learn and improve.
Well, I'm reasonably sure I could probably take a stab in the dark and guess who your source is, but and if so, it's a fairly good one. That being said, okay, so going back to you were running for the CSM, you mentioned earlier that you're one of the people that like people pushed for you to run for several years. But like, so you've been to a fan fest. Do you do like big? Are you not a YouTuber or a streamer? Are you? Where are these people coming from that are telling you for 2 years to run for the CSM?
I'm one of the moderators for the EVE Online Facebook group. I think we've got like 28,000 people on there now. Let me just have a look. Yeah. So we've got a lot of people on there. A lot of them are friendly to me. Some of them are not. You get that everywhere. It's quite quite common and quite normal. But the people that do know me well. They've actually been telling me for quite a while that I should be, using the knowledge that I have on the game mechanics and what I know to assist the CSM and CCP. And I'm making the game a better game, because I've always got like random ideas that's coming out. When the quantum core mechanics were brought in, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, okay, quantum cores, right? So they drop 100% of the time, do they? Interesting. At that point, I'm thinking, who are the main fish? Who are the big fish in the game that go out and blow up structures around Halescott? And I'm thinking people like Riot. I'm thinking people like God, I don't even know their names at the time at the moment, but Black Flag, there we go. And there's a load of other ones that go out and they do those sorts of things. So I made a massive list of all of these entities within the game who usually go out and they deliberately destroy structures to get profit or to get a good fight or anything. And then I monitored their in-game war decks, their upcoming war decks, usually within 24 hours. And then I used the spreadsheet that I had from the seeding process before to cross-reference the defending target where they live. And you see where this is going. And then I got a ship, a really fast ship that's got enough cargo space to pick up the quantum core when the structure explodes. And I was stealing some of the quantum cores. And we had an entire operation, which I believe was called Operation Larceny, where we were going around and we were cross-referencing multiple sources of information to try and grab the time. The great thing was with the timing, you could go to these locations and you could go to the structures and you could see what date and time these structures were going to come out of reinforcement. So when Riot or Black Flag is going to be there to blow the structure up, which is perfect for us. It was perfect for me, especially with my very busy lifestyle in real life. So I could time the operations that I could go to. I could facilitate other people in the US and the EU time zones, and we could have basically a triangle of information that was going around the globe where we were using that to our advantage. So we had some Australian guys, myself in Japan on our time zone. We had the guys in the EU and guys in the US, and we had that triangle going on. And we tried doing that for a while. It didn't work out as much as we would liked because, oh my god, trying to keep up with everything, it was a lot of work. It was at least, I'm not even going to exaggerate. For me personally, it was between 3 and 4 hours work a day to keep on top of the whole operation. It was intense. So we kind of gave it up because it was just so much work, and it just wasn't worth the profit that we were going out of. But it was a brilliant idea. It was a fantastic idea, and it worked. We did manage to get a few quantum cores and make a little bit of profit doing it, and it was a lot of fun. And it was more fun because it was Black Flag and it was Riot and it was the bad guys in HiSec, the big PvPs, and you should see local channel when we would steal from them and we would take their shit. They were so angry. They were more angrier than a Care Bear that gets attacked by code or by safety in HiSec, and it was just brilliant. Seeing their tears brought a big smile to my face a lot of the time.
It is crazy how angry the bad behavior actors, when bad behavior is acted upon them, are some of the worst behaved people. Man, they don't like it when
they don't like it
on
at
the
all.
other
foot. I find it brilliant. I really do. We just troll the shit out of them in local for a couple of until we leave local. But yeah, it's fantastic. It was a lot of fun. So this is what I've been doing for a while. I actually have a separate Discord which I haven't used for a while because ever since the industrial updates happened, pretty much all of my capital in EVE, all of the money that I've got has been just thrown onto investments because I'm looking at how everything is going to go up in price in 1 to 2 years. So I'm I'm just going to buy a shit ton of capitals and just sit on them for a while. So that's what I've done. And ever since then, I've kind of been, I wouldn't say I'm out of the game, and I'm still in the game because I'm still in the community. I've been posting on the Facebook group for a long time. But I have been, I suppose, taking a very small break of logging in and just enjoying watching my ISK go up automatically through my investments and nothing else. But I do have a separate Discord channel, which is essentially a think tank, which has myself and a number of other people who I know and trust who are also very good understanding how the game mechanics work. And we essentially bounce ideas off each other here, there, and everywhere. When someone has an idea, they're like, oh yeah, I've had this idea. Let's see if it will work. And either we'll go to the test server and we'll try it out, but if that's not an option, then we'll find the money in tranquility and we'll just waste it on blowing ships up or, wasting resources on trying to see if this idea will come to fruition. But we had an idea when the ESS was brought up for us. Bjorn B had the exact same idea. I found out on one of his streams a few days later, which kind of made me a bit annoyed because he made an entire corporation around this where what was it called? It was the Bank Robbers, I think the corporation was called. And essentially they would use one of those nullsec filaments that will just yeet you into a random nullsec system somewhere.
A needle jack.
And they would, Yeah, those ones. You know what I'm talking about. And then they would go to the ESS, they would grab the stuff, and then they would, once they've got enough loot in their cargo hold or they feel like they're being pursued, they would then use a Triglavian filament to get to Triglavian space, cloak up, wait 15 minutes, and then jump to HiSec and then sell that and make a profit. So I had that idea. I'm not sure if it was like maybe the same time as Beyond B, but pretty much as soon as CCP was talking about that, I'm like, oh my God, we could exploit how the filament system works. We can combine that with the ESS system, and we can make an absolute killing pretty much, almost scot-free. Just make loads of money doing that. And I was doing this with a Tech 1 Thorax with an overpowered 100 MN, a battleship afterburner. So it doesn't bloom up my signature radius with a micro warp drive. So as soon as I saw someone on D-scan coming into the ESS site, I was basically already outside of the warp scramble bubble and warping off to a safe spot to then get out as fast as I could. But yeah, it was great. So this is what I do. I see the updates which are coming out with the game. I understand them really well, read it really thoroughly, understand it, maybe play with the new mechanics on CC for a little bit and just get a feel of how it works. And then I'll mix that with old mechanics and then try and make something new and totally novel and make a lot of money doing it at the same time.
Yeah, and I sincerely believe that idea of like using the filaments both directions was at least somewhat intended by CCP from the very beginning, especially the idea of like people living in Poshfin and using filaments to break out and then raid somebody and then break back in. Seems very intended, especially given the fact that the Triglavians themselves have T1 abyssal filaments in their cargo hold, which shows that they are doing the exact same thing. They're using some sort of filament device or probably something along those lines to come into our place and using those filaments to get home. And it's us killing them and taking them that like we get those filaments. So the idea of like becoming the Triglavian, I think was actually like clearly part of that. That being said, I think that this is evidence that if it is completely inarguable that you are a player that is playing this game on all cylinders, right? Like we like to talk about where, nullsec or where the end game of Eve is. And, I like to say that Eve game can be anywhere. And you are definitely an example of somebody who is, playing Eve on all cylinders, pushing everything to its limits, exploring its niches, and trying to see what you can get out of it. And that I think makes you a really valuable CSM candidate. However, I think I have a growing concern that if your entire shtick is understanding the systems and working with them and finding exploits and using them to your advantage, how is running for the CSM not just another layer of that?
Okay, and I see the concern, and there have been a few people that have talked about this concern. So, and this actually comes on to what I was talking about in my CCP interview earlier on today, or should I say yesterday? I'm not sure what time it is for you guys now, but yeah,
days mean nothing anymore.
I don't know. Yeah, right. I don't know anymore. But I essentially, with my in-game activities and my out-game activities and my personality between the two. My in-game activities, I'm the really bad person who will mess with you and make your life really bad and just steal your shit, infiltrate your corp, fuck with you, and everyone's not very happy with you. But in real life, I'm a really nice person. I'm a teacher. I teach kids all the time, and the kids love me, and we have a fantastic time. I'm a massive, huge bubbly person in real life. If you guys ever, when FanFest is back on, if you go and see me, if you see me and say, oh my God, it's Jim, let's go and say hello. Don't be shy. Just come up to me and be like, yo, what's up? And just give me a high five. And, I'm like the nicest guy ever. I am the polar opposite of who I am in game. And because of that, when it's outside of game and when I'm taking the job of these CSMs seriously, I'm not going to be inside the CSM thinking, how can I exploit this to my advantage? Or how can I convince CCP to make this new thing for me that's going to be, even worse and make things worse and bad and stuff. So I'm absolutely not going to be like that sort of candidate at all. absolutely one of the main reasons why I'm doing this really is because many people have been saying for a long time that I should be on the CSM to assist the CSM and what's going on and to assist CCP. But yeah, so I don't really know how else you want me to answer that.
Well, so I understand the difference between in-game and out-of-game. That's an important distinction, and a lot of players make it, myself included. But like when it comes to the CSM and mechanics, like how are you going to like bias is everywhere and even into ourselves, like consciously, like how is being on the CSM, the connections, authority, and information that you get to that not just going to be another level of your in-game play, not out of game?
I mean, I'm just not going to be using like the information that I get from the CSM to, make myself in game even better, if that makes sense. Because we've got the NDA, if once we've like signed the NDA, for example, the CSM members at the moment, from what I understand and from what I've heard from some of the other candidates who are already on the CSM and they're running again, they already know what's going on for the future at the moment. CCP's already informed them, and they've got a very good idea on what's happening when the scarcity ends. And they know at the moment, they're not going to start buying certain ships or starting doing things and start telling people you should be doing this and doing that. So I'm not going to be, using that information that I get from the CSM to better my advantage in game or anything else in that regard. If I am elected into the CSM, I'm there to go to Reykjavik, go to Iceland, and I'm there to do a job. And my job, the two things that I want to talk about really is fairness between the game of all the mechanics. Make sure that some of the new mechanics that are coming in or the new things that CCP want to bring into the game are not going to interfere with current mechanics, and they can't be used in a abusive format or in a way where it could be considered exploitative. But also make sure that everything is just kept well for the game for the future. That is essentially what I want to do. That is like, that is like the most fundamental thing for me. And I've always been like that ever since I started, playing the game. I've always been a long time ago I was ganked in high sec, and I thought that was really unfair. And then later I learned about the mechanics of ganking and how much effort needs to go into ganking for a successful gank to get, to be done. And then I kind of respected it. And then I kind of learned from that experience, and then I made my ships better, or I started using a skiff rather than a machinor, so I didn't have to, So it's all about the learning process. And like you said, I am the sort of player that goes off all cylinders a lot of the time, plays on all cylinders, because as soon as my Eve career these days isn't mining, it isn't industry, it isn't PvP or PvE, it's everything. Right. I want to, as soon as new content comes into the game, I'm on it like flies on shit. I just want to see how it works, learn about it, try and use it in a way which could be fun, and generate as much content as I can from like the new stuff. And if some of that stuff is somewhat exploitative, that's where I'm going to be like saying to CCP, these mechanics here and these mechanics here, they can be used together. They don't really go well, in my opinion. This should be changed. And that is essentially why I'm running for CSM.
Yeah. So what I'm taking from this is that, like, while you do have a lot of knowledge and capability, what I'm not hearing is an agenda. And it may be just because you're good, but it sounds to me legitimately like, you're interested in, being a resource for the CSM and CCP in their discussions, which I think would be very valuable and very interesting, especially given the fact that we have a lot of really good candidates this year, which means that we're going to probably have several really, talented CSM people. And so among a constellation of experienced pilots, having someone like you there to break through the meta thinking that often, might be coming out would be useful. And the good news is that the CSM aren't senators, so it's not like Jim is going to be given the key to some, thing that he can wahaha, got it. Now I have the treasure key, whatever. That isn't how this works. He's not going to find out what happens to ESS things so that way you can situate it ahead of time. There are protections in place in the CSM for, you know, people with much further reaching networks to and how to deal with that. So it is a good point that like you probably have more to lose from that than to gain, and I think that might keep someone like you reined in. And with that in mind, it would be, you know, you're the kind of pilot or you're the kind of person that is an incredible resource when CCP is making a game in which this kind of behavior is an accepted piece of the ecosystem. You have 10 minutes.
I'm sorry. I'm a little bit confused. 10 minutes for what?
Yeah, sorry.
What was the question exactly?
This is so basically I have gone over, about my time, actually probably a little over my time, and unfortunately you have a lot to cover, and so this is actually one of my best. Normally I give the person a 10-minute warning so that way they can wrap up anything that they want or cover anything that I may not have covered. Unfortunately, you have a lot on your campaign post. I recommend people come and check it out. You have a lot of your views list out. Do you have anything that you wanted to highlight for sure? Make sure get brought forward before we wrap this up.
I think okay, so yeah, because you know you want to wrap it up and everything, that's totally fine. So I think one of the main things I really think that people should look at is because CCP have now brought in the massive industry changes recently within the game. Things like compression for moon ore and compression for gas, like that needs to be a thing. You know, trying to like transport that stuff around the game now for manufacturing purposes, it's going to be an absolute pain in the ass, especially if you're like mass producing capitals and stuff. It's going to be such a pain. So having the possibility to compress moon ore and gas for transport is something that I really want to advocate for. And there's like a load of other things, like Ashtarothi said, you know, come and check out my post, come and have a look at what I've got. And I've got loads of little things. But the one thing I really kind of want to point out is if people go down and they have a look at some of the comments, there's a number of people who have given me an absolute lot of hate, and I'm not entirely sure why. I think maybe I've stolen from them in the past or kind of betrayed them. One guy says that I doxed him in real life, and actually no. Doxing in real life, for people that don't know, I'm sure a lot of people do, but is like revealing real life information, you know, where you live, your name and everything else. What I did with this particular person was I found his, because I think he had a YouTube channel and he advertised it at one point in the Facebook group. So I used the YouTube channel to find out what his character name was because he didn't have it like, you know, covered. And then I went and killed him and, you know, caused him some grief in game. But this is essentially, you know, it's the exact same as what everybody does in game when they get information on stuff, and I just use that to my advantage. So yeah, and he thinks that's doxing, and he's got really angry with me and made some really awful comments on my CSM post. But you know, there's a few people who've said some really nice things on there. There's a few people that said some really bad things, but I think that's the same with everybody. You know, there's going to be some CSM candidates that everybody hates and some CSM candidates that everybody loves. So you know, everybody's going to be a bit different. There's me there. I mean, like, I can see it on your stream right now. I'm like helping this person out with a guide that I read on how not to get ganked while mining. So I made an entire thing for this guy in particular, and I'm like, yeah, don't do it. This is how you can avoid it. So I'm more of an educator in game as well. So
this is a big piece of the game too. Is players that do these things, and then educate the person, like lowsec, for example, like killing somebody who goes into lowsec and then messaging him and telling him what happened, or you know, why did I get ganked, you know, because it is true that like this process, this negative interaction is a learning experience, and it can even be a recruiting experience, and CCP has said or indicated that this is positive towards player retention overall. And again, like these or ganking and these kinds of things that exist in high sec, these bad behaviors or whatever, they're rules in the game that exist for us to interact with each other. And so if no one was to do these kinds of things, then it would make it far more drab, right? Like if you could just unanchor a structure and not worry about it and just pick it up whenever, then you'd be super lazy about it. You might even forget, you know, but knowing that Jim is there watching for any time that you let it slip, you know, that's what causes you to have to solve the problem. How do you make Jim not get your structure?
Exactly.
And that's where the interesting thing comes from. And so it's useful to know that you are both like intimately tied into all that, but also aware of how it all is and its importance within the Eve universe. It's been a very interesting discussion. I apologize that, yeah, by standard, I try to keep them at 1 hour. So
it's not a problem. It's both of us. We're very interested in talking at the moment, so it's absolutely fine. I totally understand. But it's been a real pleasure being here. Thank you.
But my show, this is a new thing that I'm doing very regularly. So, having people on all the time. So you are the kind of person that I would love to have on to discuss changes, because I'm the exact same way. Like, so many times you've been talking so far tonight, I've been thinking to myself, like, we had the exact same discussions, in different times or whatever within our convocation as we brainstormed ideas and whatnot. And so this is, in my opinion, this is kind of my gameplay, right? It's like looking at what's happening and what it could mean for all the different things, especially the things that other people haven't noticed yet. And that is,
I'm more than happy to tell you something that's really that you can still do today, technically, but it's not really profitable to do it these days. If you want me to, I don't know how much time we've got left or how long you want to run it on.
Go for it. You're good.
So, a long time ago, we had a thing called Operation Siege Engine, and essentially we would set up a POS, one of the old school POSes, and we would set it up in a high-sec system where loads of people had upwell structures, and we would fill this POS with hundreds, sometimes thousands of Tech 1 fitted catalysts. They would be costing us about 1.1 million each. That was it. But with a brand new character, a brand new alpha character who's got the skills to fly this, you can pump out around about 300 DPS. And a medium structure only needs 500 DPS to pause it. So we would go into a system and we would war deck everybody in there. And we would, before we war deck them, we'd send them all a mail and we would demand that they bow before us or they would die. So that was kind of like the role-playing element that went along with this, which was a lot of fun. The people that bowed, we let them live. The people that didn't, we war decked them, and then we logged everybody in, between 30 to maybe sometimes 60 of us, and we would swarm their structure with Tech 1 Catalyst. And you're thinking, hey, that's going to be really easy to defend against. It's really not, because in high sec there's no bubbles, so you can't just bubble us and then kill our pods, and so when our ship dies, we just warp the pod to a POS, get a brand new ship, and just come back to the fight and just keep going. And then so long as we replace our ships faster than they can destroy them, we will eventually win. And that's what we did for a while. So that was like some like mechanic that I thought was a little bit unfair, but we exploited the hell out of it because it was a lot of fun. And actually that actually ties into what you were saying about using PvP as a recruitment mechanic, because we actually managed to get a few corporations who we blew up their structure. The corporation would disband, and then like maybe, I don't know, a few people from the corporation would contact us and say, hey, what you did was really cool. Can we join you? And then they would join us. So yeah, that actually happened quite a lot, and it was really nice.
So all right. Well, yes, clearly I'm going to have you on again, because I think that discussions with you, like, you could really help me show people how interesting high sec is. High sec often, in particular, high sec is. Because this stuff is very interesting. People often write it off as being just newbies or just like low-end PvE or whatever. But the play and counterplay in high sec, it can be just as interesting as anywhere else, and far more fiddly given the amount of rules that are often at play with some of these things. So definitely a discussion that we're going to have more of soon enough, regardless of whether or not you get on the CSM. But I really appreciate you coming on and chatting, and it's a great campaign. Sounds like you've got a lot of energy behind it, and you do bring the chops to the table that would make it so that you could sit at a table with any of the other guys and hang and contribute meaningfully to the CSM discussions. And so if you combine that with interest in the things that you've expounded, then you are a really good candidate for that kind of understanding. Because honestly, if people want those kinds of exploitive mechanics, quote unquote exploitive mechanics, potentially identified prior to them going into full circulation, and instead of it being reactive, it can be proactive. The CSM being under NDA allows them to see things earlier on if CCP choose to, and several dev teams have and do, which would allow someone like Jim to almost white hat hacker it and help them understand where the exploits would come from, and say, hey man, if you do that, that's fair and good, but guess what's going to happen. So
I love the way that you said that, white hat hacking. You're exactly correct. That's the term I'm going to use now. That's really good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming, like I said, and thanks for accepting the limits that were imposed upon you by the show. And I look forward to seeing where your campaign goes.
See you soon. Take care. It's been a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Right. 07.
07.